Hi everyone, welcome back to Balanced and Nourished NP. We're doing this a little different. I'm attempting voiceover, so we'll see how this goes. Today we're also working on the end of the August meal prep, and this week we're taking a little trip to Sicily, or at least we're pretending, from my kitchen in the Hudson Valley area of New York. This is Sicilian-Inspired. It's not extremely authentic. I am part Sicilian, actually. My mom's side, my favorite grandparent in the world, my grandfather. My maternal grandfather is Sicilian-American, so I'm excited about covering this today. Using flavors and some of the traditions of cooking that I grew up with, but I'm also cooking exactly how I do cook at home in terms of meal prep. And I just wanted to make that distinction because I don't think meal prep has to mean following 5 recipes perfectly. And sometimes you use what you have, and sometimes you will maybe change an ingredient. Sometimes you're recreating something your grandmother made, and there was never actually a written recipe to begin with, but also ingredients change. And that's for sure what's happening today. So let's start with the chicken. So you'll notice that my chicken, it's already cooked. I actually put the whole chicken in the crock pot this morning. I did it very early. It's Sunday, so I did this before I went to Mass in the morning. And why I like this so much, because it just makes it so easy, I just seasoned it with lemon juice, oregano, garlic, olive oil, salt, pepper, and the crock pot did the work. But I do have, in the recipes that will be posted on my Kajabi site, a traditional, which would be roasted in the oven, which is, always definitely the preferred. So then a little bit later in the day, after I had lunch with my family, enjoying Sundays, we're in the evening. And this is when I really like to, bang out the meal prep. So the chicken is cooked, and I'll take it out. I'll store it in the refrigerator. A lot of it is going to be shredded. You don't want your entire Sunday to be consumed by doing meal prep, right? And this helps to kind of be able to clean as I go, so this way the kitchen doesn't get too overwhelming. Now, also a reason that I make so much chicken for during the week, because I like to do other things with it. I could add chicken, white beans, like the cannellini beans, with arugula to make a nice salad. I can make chicken and add it with some grains, either rice or farro. I can combine it with caponata. I can put the chicken over ricotta toast with vegetables. I can make a wrap. If we're getting towards the end of the week and I still have some chicken, you can also freeze it too. It's even better if you have that foresight that you probably have extra, I would freeze it at the earliest time convenient, really, so it's much fresher. And that's kind of, just how I do things, and you'll hear that over and over again about the style of how I meal prep. But really, it's about cooking ingredients that can become meals rather than cooking 7 individual meals. Now, in terms of protein, this is especially true for those of us who are in midlife. Protein becomes increasingly important. We want to preserve lean muscle as we age, but, especially during and after menopause. And if you're someone who is also on a GLP-1 medication and your appetite is reduced, this becomes even more important, because you may simply be eating less in general, and you usually are eating less in general. So you want to make sure that your food is nutrient dense. And I'm not saying that everybody needs an enormous amount of protein or that there's one perfect number for everybody. Your needs are individualized. But when I'm putting together my own meals, I like to ask myself, where's the protein? Then I build around it. And I also put that same energy into things like fiber from vegetables too. 4 ounces of chicken, that will give you somewhere around 28 to 33 grams of protein, which is a great goal per meal. And this also depends if you're having breast meat, dark meat, skin, no skin. It will change how the macros look. But it does help give a really nice foundation to a meal. And then from there, you could add vegetables, beans, whole grains, healthy fats, all those wonderful things, especially a little bit more of a Mediterranean vibe that I personally like, a little bit more reflective of what I grew up eating. And I think we always kind of fall back to that in our own childhood, what we grew up eating. It's comfortable for us with vegetables. So now in my area of the world, it's the end of August, and the produce is just amazing at this time of year. The tomatoes are really vine ripened at this point. Eggplant is abundant. Zucchinis feels like it's always abundant in summer squash. Peppers, the herbs also. These are ingredients in particular that I like to grow because I eat them all the time, but also they fit nicely into this style of cooking for me, that I like, more Mediterranean inspired. So rather than thinking about vegetables as something that you have to do, it's an obligation, like a little side dish, we want to put this next to our protein. We want it to be a major part of the meal. Really, half your plate, this is what you want. You want vegetables. And on my meal plan for this week, and I'm not making it here because it's kind of similar to ratatouille that I did a few weeks ago, but it's a caponata, and I love caponata all year round, really. You can make a lot of this when you have an abundance of eggplant in particular. You could freeze portions. In the cooler months, I really love polenta, which is, if you don't know, it's a cornmeal based. You could eat it soft, and then when you put it in the refrigerator, it will get very firm. And when it's firm, I like to cut it and kind of pan fry it a little bit and then serve the warm caponata over it. So that's just, different ways of using it. And this way you don't have waste also, which is great. And what I like so much is there is that characteristic of the sweet and sour element, which is one of my favorite combinations. And there are many different versions. And really what I love also about traditional food is how you could still play around with it and adjust it to what you like today. Because tastes change over time also. You could, in terms of foods from Sicily, it's a small island, but it's diverse. And depending where you are, the food's still going to be slightly different. You could ask 5 different families, Sicilian families, how they make something, and you'll get 5 different answers. And it's true throughout Italy in general, from the north to the south, completely different cuisines. So, again, we're inspired by tradition rather than trying to declare that there is only one correct recipe. Caponata is a fantastic meal prep, and just because it's one of those foods you could use many different ways, but they taste even better the next day, and so on. Serve it warm, have it cold, room temperature, have it over grains, have it alongside chicken. I love it also on toasted sourdough with ricotta, adding it to bowls. You could even have it over some pasta. There's just so many things you could do with it, and I have been known to eat this in front of the refrigerator with a fork. Don't judge me. So with fiber, why fiber is so important, and also a reason that I love meals like this is because we're just naturally adding fiber. We're not trying to manufacture it, right? We don't have to depend on things like Metamucil, although I think there's definitely a use for it, and I do recommend it to quite a few of my own patients and clients when they're struggling. But we're getting a lot of vegetables here. Beans are great. Green beans have a nice protein component to them, and they have the fiber benefit as well, and there's no saturated fat. So that's why beans are such a phenomenal fiber. We're getting fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds. Fiber helps to support our digestive health, and it helps with being satiated. These foods, they're plant foods, of course, and they bring vitamins, minerals, tons of phytonutrients. And if you are on a GLP-1, again, you just to keep in mind that when you do add these huge amounts of fiber, it isn't always necessarily better. So you want to kind of ease into this, because sometimes too much fiber, and if you're not drinking enough water on top of it, almost think of it like cement happening in your intestines. So it's important to stay very well hydrated and start bringing the fiber in. And this especially if you're a person who's not accustomed to eating so much fiber all the time. But we want to just increase it gradually and make sure we're getting enough fluids in as well. And I'll just keep saying, you want to make sure that your individual nutrition plan is discussed with your own healthcare provider or a dietitian, which is appropriate. I am an NP, but because I don't know everybody individually, I wouldn't make recommendations regarding your health history. This is just general information, basically what I do. Now, with the meatball recipes, and I'm sorry for this long break. I didn't realize how far back I had the camera, and I can't figure out how to cut that piece out yet. I'm very much a work in process. But with the meatballs, so I depart from a more typical Sicilian-inspired recipe. I did share with you one that's kind of reflective of the flavors often used in Sicily. It has things like raisins, pine nuts, and you'll see that in a lot of recipes. in Sicily, but I personally, in what I'm doing right now in the kitchen is not that. I'm making the ones that feel a little bit more like home to me, that I grew up eating. That recipe I did not include, but in the future I will. But these meatballs, this is something I had every once a week growing up. Like my mom would have a huge pot of sauce on, and I mean big. And yes, meatballs were in there, but we had a bunch of other things. There was like sausage in there, there was brujol in there, and you'd be surprised. Also, that hard-boiled eggs, and that is definitely something that's very Sicilian, and people don't realize that. A lot of people would never have seen that before, but you'll see in a lot of traditional Sicilian cooking, hard-boiled eggs are used a lot. Brujol, which is eaten throughout Italy, but specifically in Sicily, we often have hard-boiled eggs in the filling as well. It's a great protein, and it's very affordable protein. It's very abundant. It's something that if you raise chickens, you know that you'll always have a lot of eggs. It's not like if you're in a situation where you're raising meat, where that's done at, usually like at specific times of the year. Eggs are always available. And in the winter, they might not be as available, but a lot of people do like to do like water glassing eggs, or they preserve eggs. But for the purpose of hard-boiled eggs, I don't want to get off track too much. It's something that we commonly use. But I love that. I love seeing sauce cooking. That's what it reminds me of so much. It's not just macros when we think about food. It's still something we should really be enjoying. Food is culture. It reflects our culture, our family, our memories, sitting around somebody's table, holidays together. Just smelling certain foods will trigger these memories, and hopefully in a really good way for you. And sometimes the recipe doesn't have to be modernized. The memory attached to it is what makes it so nourishing too. So for me, that's what the meatballs are. Now, what I'm doing, just so you know, because it's not posted, I'm using a pound of ground beef and a pound of ground pork. I use stale bread, and I make my own bread, so it gets stale pretty quick because there's no preservatives. So I let it go stale, and a lot of times I'll even freeze it, and then I take it out again, and I can toast it. But for the meatballs, what I do is I take stale bread, and I put the milk with the stale bread, and you let the bread absorb it. And then that actually goes into the meat mixture with eggs. I'm using 3 eggs with this. And the bread, I don't have a measurement. You just kind of feel it out, which is, I know, terrible to say. It's not helpful, but that's just how I do it. And the bread is really what makes the meatballs so light. If you have too little, you're going to have very dense meatballs, and no one really wants the feeling of hockey pucks, so it helps. Then once everything's incorporated, and you're going to season this to your liking as well, you roll them. I want to say they're big. I don't have small. I don't do them small unless it's like escarole soup or something. So for the meatballs, I'm making them. They're bigger than a golf ball, smaller than a tennis ball. If that helps, it probably doesn't. Anywho, and then I brown them in oil. I do, and then I will now in this case prep. Let them cool and put them in the refrigerator. I'm going to make a lot. So half of them I'm going to put in like a food saver bag, vacuum sealer, and I'll put it in the freezer for future use as well. So another thing I just want to mention about that with meal prep is that everything doesn't have to be fully cooked on that day. Sometimes you're just prepping ingredients, and you may want to use them to cook with later. Like maybe you want to come home at night, and that might be part of your evening. You like to to relax and do the meal prep, to make dinner for your family. So if you have things ready to go, it does make it a lot quicker as well. So I don't cook these things through. I just brown them, and then I'll figure it out during the week how I'm going to use them. All right. I did mention already about freezing. They do freeze beautifully. You could freeze them raw if you want, which is easier. Freeze them raw on a parchment-lined sheet pan until they're firm, and then transfer them into a freezer-safe container or bag. Or if you want, you could brown them a little. That works too. Future you is going to be very happy, because when there's a random Tuesday night and you remember, I have nothing now for dinner, you have meatballs. You could brown them. You could, if you're using jarred sauce, just open up some sauce and pour it in there. Make some pasta, and you're good to go. Serve it with a salad or sauteed greens, whatever you want on the side, and you're ready. You have a complete meal. It kind of helps keep us motivated, and it's hard, especially when you have a lot going on, or your families have a lot going on. So what am I exactly going to be eating this week? So really, once we have all these components together, there's so many different things we can do. We have the lemon oregano chicken. I could serve it with roasted potatoes. I could serve it with the later summer vegetables that we discussed. And depending on how you portion it, you're looking at around 500 calories. And that's about 40 to 45 grams of protein, which is amazing. These are just estimates. You know, if you're tracking macros, this is something you would be putting in exactly what you're having and the volume in order to figure that out. But I don't get obsessed about this too much. Somewhere with dinner, I stay somewhere between 475, 525, somewhere in that range. I love the chicken caponata bowl idea. I might take some grains. Farro is a good one. You can use rice, whatever, even pasta. I add the caponata, some of the chicken that's sliced, a little bit of the ricotta, some fresh basil. We have a lot of basil still, or maybe some arugula if you want more greens, a little lemon juice on top. And it's beautiful. It has the proteins, the vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, and that right there could be somewhere around 500 calories, 40 grams of protein too. It's not like you're eating the same thing every night, which is night. Lunches, some things that I can do, because I know we're always focused on dinner, but lunch is important also. The chicken I'll have with the white beans and arugula. Throw in some tomatoes, red onion. I love capers. Love capers. Some fresh lemon juice, a little olive oil. A lot of fiber in that, especially from the beans and the vegetables. I really love tuna stuffed tomatoes, actually. This is great for lunch, and you can eat it cold. So depending on how your job is, how much time you really have to take realistically for lunch. And tomatoes right now are fabulous in August, so I'll mix some tuna, a little bit of olive oil, celery, capers, olives, parsley, lemon. If you want a creamier, maybe you could, again, the ricotta is good, or you might want to use a little Greek yogurt. You stuff the tomato. It's nice with some fruit on the side, some whole grain crackers. With all the tuna, it can be up as much as 30 plus grams of protein too. It just depends on the tuna. Another one of my favorites too, I love bread. So whole grain bread, sourdough bread, like whole grain peasant bread style. I put some ricotta over it. I add some of the caponata. You could also put some chicken, some fresh basil with it as well. The bread has such a nice chewy texture, but also the outside tends to be crunchy. And then with the ricotta, which is creamy, and that's caponata, which has that sweet and sour taste because of the vinegar. Some chicken with the lemon in it, it's really good. And you're also looking at 35 grams of protein too. If we go back to the salad, how we mentioned before, the white bean salad, you also have the option of putting canned tuna in that as well. And that also great fiber, fat, and protein too. With other ways to use the meatballs, aside from just in its tomato sauce, which is great, over pasta, which is like my favorite thing in the world probably. Just with pasta, and I will never stop eating pasta. Just, you want to be realistic about the portions. I think a big issue is that we eat so fast. At least this is definitely a U.S. problem. We're always moving, so we eat fast. Just really being intentional and giving yourself that time to enjoy your meal, sitting down, not being distracted by screens, and just eating at a normal, slow pace and enjoying the food. And listening to your body cues, which is important. It doesn't take a lot, and you shouldn't eat ginormous amounts of it. But pasta, a good pasta. I eat only the imported pasta just because the ingredients, it's basically durum wheat, which is semolina flour and water, and that's it. And you'd be surprised, but Aldi, however you say it, they have great imported pasta. So that's what I tend to buy. It's very reasonably priced. It's like $2. And if you are on that GLP-1, you are going to feel full very quickly. So you really want to focus a little bit more on the protein instead of the pasta in this case. Just keep that in mind. Start with the meatball. Make sure there's vegetables involved too. And pasta fits beautifully in your life. We don't have to eliminate pasta. I'm not eliminating pasta ever. Now with lunch, some lunch ideas. You can make bowls. You can make grain bowls and use meatballs. Meatballs also are great with caponata, maybe on flatbread or that sourdough bread with a little bit of fresh mozzarella, some basil. If you make your own pizza at home, I like to do that on Fridays. Leftover meatballs are fabulous for that as well. Or you can make a white pizza with ricotta. That's on the list for this week, the grocery list. Now shrimp. Shrimp I'm actually having for dinner tonight, so that's why this works out well. But if I wasn't going to have shrimp tonight, I would make the dish and wait to put the shrimp in, personally. Just because it will, it feels fresher. Because, seafood is a short shelf life once you defrost it and then once you cook it. Or if you're buying it fresh, even more so. But this is just simply shrimp with pasta. For me, it's going to be with pasta. I'm using cherry tomatoes, zucchini, garlic, capers, lemon and herbs. I'm just cooking the vegetable while the pasta cooks. The shrimp, if I'm doing this in the future, I would be adding then. But for today's purposes, I'm adding it now since I'm having it. And that's it. Dinner is done. It's so easy. Just keeping in mind, you're going to reserve some of that pasta water to help thicken up the sauce. And if you want it creamier, add a little cream. Nothing wrong with a little bit of cream. Actually has a very low glycemic index. I don't want to eat food on Friday that's been sitting in a container since Sunday if I could avoid it, so that's why I like to mix things up. Now, in terms of breakfast and snacks, we want to talk about that because we're going to include that. And now, just to say, not everything has to be very savory. I kind of lean towards savory a little bit more, but I do like the mix. So I will put this up as a separate video. I call it whipped lemon ricotta bowls. So I just take some ricotta, and you can also add a little bit of Greek yogurt if you want. It kind of changes the texture up. It does make it even more tangy. You could use some vanilla extract. You could also use vanilla protein powder if you want. I like cake batter protein from Clean Simple Eats. That's really good. Some lemon zest for sure. Peaches. This is the time for peaches right now where I am. And then, of course, some chopped pistachios. I love pistachios. And this is good. This is great for breakfast or as a snack. It's also a great dessert. And if you want to sweeten it, you absolutely can sweeten it. Honey is great. Raw honey is really, really nice in terms of sweetening. And it's something that is actually used quite a bit in Italy as well, especially southern Italy, Sicily. We use it for different things, for desserts. And there's a good amount of protein in that, especially if you're using the ricotta and the Greek yogurt. Now, I want to touch on with the macros. So if you're someone who's following along specifically for weight management, a day using meals like this could definitely fall somewhere between 1450 to 1650 calories with about 110 to 130 grams of protein, which is great. It just depends on your portions, on how you're mixing the meals up. And if you are tracking, just keep that in mind. This is just an example. It's not a prescription for what you have to do. A 35-year-old woman, a 65-year-old woman, a guy who trains people on GLP-1s. Some people are maintaining their weight and they don't want to necessarily have the same calorie or protein restrictions, quote unquote, or requirements. So we're not taking somebody else's calorie goals and using that for ourselves. It really has to be based on what your needs are. So the framework again is just, look at a plate, imagine a plate. You want half of your plate to be vegetables. You really do. And then the other half, we want to have protein and really nice fiber-rich carbohydrates. Root vegetables are a great place to get the fiber, honestly. Also, whole grains as well. Farro, the ancient grains, farro is good. Brown rice is fine. I like I said, there's no shame. 100% eating pasta. But just different ways of mixing things up. And you have to have the good fats too. Good fats are important. You want it to taste good. You want to enjoy food. Food should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be something that we're scared of or that becomes a chore or something that we have to do just to live. Now, by Saturday, it's time to really clean things out because, again, on Sunday is when I do my actual meal prep. So basically what I do is I look at the refrigerator, I see what's left, Say there's some chicken, say there's some meatballs, maybe some grains, caponata, roasted vegetables, salad stuff, ricotta, olives, whatever it may be. I just find creative ways to use these different things. This is like, at the end of the week is where the whole bowl concept really seems to come into play, honestly. And for me, it's really important to me personally to reduce the amount of food that is thrown away. It's very hard for me the idea of wasting food is terrible. Actually, so many people don't have access to it on a regular basis and are living in scarcity. And I don't take that for granted. And I'm grateful for what I have. What I really hope you take away from this week is that eating this Mediterranean food in particular, it doesn't have to mean just like, grilled chicken and some steamed vegetables, because that's absolutely what it's not. It's everything but. And especially Sicilian-inspired food. It's extremely flavorful. Tomatoes, eggplant, the citrus, the herbs, vinegars. It just adds such a nice balance of sweet, salty, savory, all the things. Beans, grains, olives, capers. I love capers. Don't sleep on capers. I think they might be more of an acquired taste, but I just they were always in our food growing up, so I think I'm just used to it. Cheeses, you could have cheese. Really sharp cheeses, things like Parmesan, for example. A little goes a long way because it's so flavorful. Hard-boiled eggs, floating around. My grandmother's sauce. There's room for everything. We're not looking for perfection. That's not our goal. Our goal is to create a way of eating that supports our health, and we still feel connected to pleasure, family, our cultures, and especially in midlife. I think that's very important. We're not trying to survive on a diet for the next 30 years. We're trying to build a lifestyle that we really, truly want to live. So that's it for me today. That's our late August Sicilian-inspired meal prep. We have the lemon-oregano chicken, meatballs, caponata, vegetables, beans, farro, tomatoes. I'll be having the shrimp tonight with some fresh pasta. And again, from all of that, you'll always have ingredients to make things like salads, grain bowls, stuffed tomatoes, toast. In different ways to eat toast, not your everyone says avocado toast. There's a lot more you can do with toast. And, and still have time to enjoy your family or whatever traditions you have. Meal prep needs to fit into your life. It doesn't become your life. And if you are making any of these meals, please let me know. Let me know if it's been helpful. And if your grandmother would be horrified by something I did, you can tell me that also, but just be nice about it. So thank you so much for spending your day with me. I will see you next week on the Balanced and Nourished NP. Take care of yourself. Eat something delicious. And I will see you at the next one. Have a great night.